Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that most Americans recognize that if you want a slice of the American pie, you ought to help bake it. But there are certain corporations that seek the justice of American courts, the protection of the American military, and all the other rights and benefits of being American without paying their fair share for that right. Indeed, a number of our largest corporations pay an effective tax rate that is lower than the janitorial crews cleaning their offices. That's not right. And while this budget document that Republicans have advanced today cite the 1986 Reagan tax reform as a model, they actually reject the leadership of President Reagan. In 1986, he signed into law a measure that actually raised tax revenues on corporations in order to help pay for tax cuts for individuals. This budget, in contrast, appears to propose a net reduction of the type that has been urged by a number of corporate interests to the Ways and Means Committee already this year, that would be paid for either by shifting the burden to individuals or borrowing more money from the Chinese, or both. Today, we have seen our Republican colleagues refuse to name even one tax loophole that they would close or one tax expenditure that they would terminate. For those corporations that aren't paying their fair share today, they seem to be offering all sugar and no medicine. They insist upon a statutory tax rate cut for corporations while implying that it will be paid for without explaining exactly how. These are multinationals like General Electric, which continues to use existing loopholes to make, as it did in a recent year, $14.2 billion on its worldwide income without paying taxes at home. Or large pharmaceutical companies that pay effective tax rates in the teens, while the community pharmacy in our neighborhoods across America that would be dealing directly with those who are ill may be paying 2 or 3 times as much in an effective rate. At the expense of working families and small businesses, the Republican approach gives the largest corporations a statutory rate cut and leaves them with their big tax loopholes as well. I believe that this Republican plan simply encourages the continued export of jobs overseas. A business that is deciding, will we build our factory in Ohio, in Texas, in Wisconsin, knows that its profits from such an endeavor will be taxed immediately. Or it can choose to build overseas where it will not face any immediate taxes. The choice to offshore is an incentive that's built into our tax code. This amendment would close the international tax loopholes that encourage companies to invest abroad rather than at home. It would prevent General Electric from avoiding taxes on its financial activities abroad. It would stop multinationals from moving American intellectual property, such as formulas, recipes, and trademarks, to tax havens to avoid taxes. It would prevent a corporation from deducting interest on its loans here against its American taxes. At the same time, it doesn't report any income immediately on the very factories that it borrowed the money to build abroad. When some talk of maintaining global competitiveness, they mean slowly the multinationals' bottom line. I believe that we need to focus on making America competitive, on having a tax system that encourages jobs being created here in the United States. And our nation is competitive not just because of its tax system, but because we have an education system that fosters successive generations of innovative thinkers. We're competitive because we have a stable business environment and adequate legal protections. We're competitive because we have a military second to none. But that costs some money to have it that way, and these who benefit from it should share in the cost. This amendment, in essence, closes those loopholes and uses the funds that are generated by closing those loopholes to both expand our investment in education, in addressing the crumbling infrastructure of our bridges and roads across the country, and then it uses some of the proceeds, as we should, to actually reduce Mr. Chairman, in short, we seek the same objective of debt reduction, but we believe that to sustain a competitive economy, we need to be advancing our investment in education from pre-K to post-grad. and that means avoiding the cuts that are proposed in your budget for Pell Grants, for Head Start, for other educational programs. We can have the education to strengthen our workforce at the same time that we address our national debt by closing these loopholes and ensuring that everyone contributes to the cost of the world's greatest democracy. We have had some success in Texas. One of the companies that decided it didn't want to pay for any of that success is Transocean, the world's largest rig builder that did such a great job last year in the Gulf. It kept its employees in Houston. It just moved its corporate charter to Zug, Switzerland, so that it could avoid paying its fair share and renounce its American citizenship. The solution that Mr. Ryan advances to multiple tax loopholes in our code is to create a bigger one called the territorial tax system. What that means is no incentive to create jobs in American territory and a great incentive, since you pay no taxes on any foreign earnings, to create them abroad. I don't believe anyone supports double taxation. That's why we have a system of foreign tax credits to avoid it. This amendment is a simple way of closing loopholes and asking General Electric and everyone else to live better by contributing their fair share, by paying the same effective tax rate that their janitor and the distributors pay, and I urge its adoption.